There's still time to make something great for the holiday season. I'm Phil from Woodsmith, and in this video we're going to make a Christmas tree that you can use as a holiday centerpiece on your dining table, set it up on the mantle, or even on the entry table. It's a great way to add some sparkle that you've made yourself. We'll also be able to see how you can customize it to suit your needs, and best of all, you can do it with just a few common shop tools. So let's get building. The tree is made up of 8 separate branches in 2 different styles. They're on the same pattern. You can print it out, tape it together, and then we'll put it onto our blanks. What I've done is use some spray adhesive and stick it down to the top piece of your blanks. Now, since we're making 8, I don't want to have to repeat this 8 separate times. So I have 4 pieces of pine here, 1/8 inch thick. What I've done is put some double-sided tape on here so that I can stick them all together, so we'll cut them out all at the same time, speeding up this whole process. Once I have these taped together, our next stop is over at the drill press. I have 2 goals here at the drill press. The first is to use an 1/8 inch drill bit to drill out the locations where the ornaments will go later on. Next, since I'm here, I'm going to use a small Forstner bit to drill out some of the inside corners in different places on the branch patterns. This is going to save some time on cleanup and to help while I'm cutting these out over at the bandsaw. Whenever I'm cutting small, thin pieces like this, I like to put down an auxiliary surface on my bandsaw table. It's just a piece of hardboard with some double-sided tape on the bottom, and it creates a lot of support around the blade to prevent tear out. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is to make a weaving, meandering cut going from some of the drilled holes that I made in order to cut the blank into 2 separate pieces. That's going to make it a lot easier to handle while I'm cutting out each of the different branch patterns. I like to make relief cuts whenever I'm making scroll cutting actions like this. This means making a cut from the edge of the workpiece down into one of the valleys or at one of the peaks. That way I can cut to it and it puts less stress on the blade, and then the waste pieces can fall away easily and I can clear them away. You can also see how the drilled out holes that I made allow me to be able to turn the workpiece easily and be able to cut in from a different direction. The width of the blade that you're using will determine how tight of a curve that you can make. Here I have a 3/8 inch blade that I usually keep on the saw. I can make fairly tight turns, but sometimes I'll need to back up out of a cut and then come at it from another direction in order to complete it. One of the nice things about using a bandsaw is that you can use the front edge of the blade almost like a rasp or a file and move the workpiece side to side to scrape away some material as you work down to the layout lines. That's going to save a lot of sanding and cleanup time later on. Most of the work is done at the bandsaw. Now what I want to do is clean up the edges and remove a lot of the blade marks and some of the inconsistencies from the cutting process. I'm going to do that at the spindle sander. I've installed the smallest of the spindles to be able to get into as many of the nooks and crannies as possible on these branch patterns. Now what I'm going to do is work against the rotation of the spindle and take very light cuts. For the places where I have to remove a lot of material, rather than just grind straight in right where that is, I'm going to make a lot of sweeping passes so that I can maintain those nice flowing curves that I want throughout the whole look of this project. I've separated the individual branch pieces here because I find that it's easier to shape and refine them one at a time rather than trying to keep them all together as a big thick stack. You don't have to worry too much about trying to keep these identical. Each one, as you shape it, is still going to look pretty similar to the other 3 that are part of that pattern. And let's be fair, this is just one other way to be able to make this tree uniquely yours by your own shaping as you work here. A spindle sander does a great job on the large curves, but on all of these, there's going to be a few little tight places that are challenging to get to. For those, I've made my own little sanding solutions. It's just wrapping some sandpaper around a dowel or applying some adhesive back sandpaper to just a leftover strip of hardboard. And I can use these like little files to sneak into all the little areas and smooth and refine the curves and to remove any blade marks or any burning marks from it. And then once I'm satisfied with the edges, I'll sand both faces here before we can move on to the base. Let's wrap up our Christmas tree project with a little assembly. I created the base here. You'll see that it's round, but it starts as a square blank. I drilled a hole that I'll use for what will be the trunk of the tree. And then I went over to the table saw and cut a series of grooves in there to hold the branches that we made earlier. Now, 2 of them you can do just running the piece against the rip fence. But for the angled grooves, I set up a miter gauge with a stop block so that I could just run from corner to corner. Then back over at the bandsaw, I made a real simple circle jig that I was able to use and cut this round using the hole in the middle as a center point with just a short piece of dowel. So what we can do now is bring everything together. So I have a dowel here that serves as the trunk, glue that into that center hole. And now I've made 2 piles of the branches, separating them out into their different styles, because I want to alternate as I go around here. I put a bead of glue in each one of the grooves in the base using a narrow nozzled glue bottle, just to minimize the amount of drips that I get out onto the surface of it, just because they're really hard to clean up later on. And then I find having a small artist paintbrush or a small glue brush helps to be able to apply an even coat of glue along the back edges of all the branches so that they get good contact with the dowel as you're gluing it in place. I'm using a fast setting glue here, so I just have to use the old finger clamps here for a few seconds until the glue sets up. Then just work your way around, alternating the branch patterns, gluing them into place. All right, I'm gonna wrap a rubber band around the top here just to clamp things in place. We'll let the glue dry, and then it's time to decorate our tree. All right, let's wrap this up. We're gonna put a little topper on our Christmas tree here, which is just a finial that I picked up at the craft store and then drilled a hole in it for a small dowel, and then a matching hole in the top of our trunk here. Which I think looks great. You could also paint it if you wanted it to, just to add a little punch of color. Now for the ornaments on the tree, I've gotten a good start already. These are just made from, again, little wood balls that I picked up at a hobby store, and then some copper wire that you can just buy, and then snip to the right length, thread it through, and with a little spray paint, added the color, red in this case here, and then they fit right into the holes that we drilled earlier on our branch patterns. Here again, this is a great way to customize your particular Christmas tree. You can make different color ornaments to put on there, or add some glitter, or whatever you want here. The thing is that with a short amount of time, just a little bit of material, you can create a fun accent to spice up your holidays. And here at Woodsmith and Grizzly, we're hoping that your Christmas is merry and bright this year.